The afternoon sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a golden haze over Maple Street, the busiest part of the small suburban town. Cars honked impatiently as pedestrians hurried along, juggling shopping bags, cell phones, and conversations. The air smelled faintly of roasted peanuts from a street vendor nearby, mixed with the aroma of fresh bread wafting out of a bakery at the corner. Among the crowd walked Margaret Ellis, a 78-year-old woman with silver hair neatly tied in a bun. She wore a long beige coat and carried a cloth shopping bag filled with groceries, apples, bread, and a carton of milk that weighed more than her frail frame should have been carrying. Her back bent slightly with age, and her steps were slow but steady, the kind of careful walk that came from years of experience knowing her knees couldn't be trusted. She was only a few blocks from her apartment, but to her, every step felt like a small victory. The city, once familiar and gentle, now seemed rushed and harsh. People brushed past her without a glance. Nobody had time to slow down. As Margaret reached the crosswalk, the pedestrian signal flashed green. She stepped forward, clutching her bag close. A child darted past her, bumping her arm, and the carton of milk nearly slipped out. She steadied herself, took a deep breath, and pressed on. Then it happened. Her right foot caught the edge of a broken piece of pavement, and in an instant, her balance gave way. The world spun. The bag tumbled from her hand, spilling apples that rolled into the street. Margaret fell hard onto the concrete, the sound of her body hitting the ground drowned by the city's noise. A sharp pain shot up her knee, and she cried out, a fragile sound, almost lost in the chaos. Her glasses slipped off and skittered across the sidewalk. For a moment, she lay still, her cheek pressed against the cold ground, dazed, humiliated, and in pain. People noticed. Of course they did. A man in a business suit slowed, glanced down at her, then shook his head and kept walking, muttering something about being late. A group of teenage girls standing near the bus stop laughed nervously, whispering but making no move to help. Someone pulled out their phone, not to call for help, but to record. The lens caught Margaret's trembling hands as she tried, and failed, to push herself up. The apples rolled further, one stopping near the foot of a teenage boy named Ethan Carter, who was standing at the edge of the crowd. He was 16, tall for his age, his backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. Ethan had just finished school and was supposed to meet his friends for basketball practice. He glanced down at the apple, then at the scene in front of him. Margaret lay helpless on the sidewalk, surrounded by strangers who watched but did nothing. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from indecision. Should he get involved? He'd be late. People might laugh at him. Maybe someone else would step in. But nobody did, and in that frozen moment, as Margaret's frail body shook and her eyes filled with tears, Ethan felt something stir inside him. Something that wouldn't let him walk away. Ethan's fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack as he stood frozen, the apple at his feet a silent reminder of what had just happened. His friends were already texting him, "Where are you, bro? Hurry up." He knew if he didn't show up soon, the coach would be furious. Basketball was important to him. It was his one shot at earning a college scholarship. But when he looked at the elderly woman sprawled on the ground, gasping for breath and clutching her knee, something inside him whispered, "If not you, then who?" The crowd had grown, but still no one acted. A man leaned on a lamppost scrolling through his phone as if. The sight of an old woman lying on the sidewalk was just another piece of background noise. A mother tugged her child away quickly, whispering, "Don't stare, sweetheart." The group of girls by the bus stop giggled again, one of them pointing her phone at Margaret, clearly recording a video. Ethan's stomach twisted in disgust. Why are they just watching? Why is everyone pretending this isn't happening? Margaret, meanwhile, was trying desperately to pull herself up. Her hands shook as she pressed against the ground, but her arms gave way, and she collapsed back down with a soft cry. Her shopping bag lay torn beside her, the milk carton leaking onto the pavement. A trickle of blood slid down her knee where the skin had split open. "Please, someone," she whispered, her voice hoarse. It was almost inaudible over the sound of passing cars, but Ethan heard it. And that was enough. He glanced once more at his phone. His friends' texts piled up. "Dude, we're starting warm-ups. Coach is mad. Don't mess this up, Ethan." For a moment, He thought of ignoring her, of convincing himself that she would be fine, that someone older, someone more responsible, would step in. He imagined himself arriving late but still making it to practice, sweating on the court, focused on his dream. But the thought left a bitter taste in his mouth. This wasn't about basketball anymore. This was about being human. Before he realized it, his legs moved on their own. He pushed through the small circle of bystanders and knelt beside Margaret. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle but urgent. Margaret looked up through watery eyes, her lips trembling. I can't get up." "It's all right," Ethan said quickly, glancing at the crowd. "Don't worry, I've got you." He shot a hard look at the girls with the phone. "Stop recording and call an ambulance." They blinked at him, surprised by his tone, but one of them hesitated and finally started dialing. Others shuffled awkwardly, suddenly ashamed. Ethan slipped his backpack off and placed it under Margaret's head like a cushion. "Just stay still, okay? Help is coming." She gripped his hand with surprising strength, her voice shaking. "Thank you, young man, everyone just walked by." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He glanced up again, his eyes sweeping across the silent faces of adults and teenagers alike. Their expressions shifted uneasily under his gaze. No one wanted to admit it, but they had all failed this woman. And in that moment, Ethan realized something powerful. Sometimes being a hero wasn't about having superpowers. Sometimes it was just about making a choice no one else dared to make. The auditorium of Maplewood High School was packed that evening. Students, parents, and teachers filled the seats, murmuring in anticipation. On stage stood a small wooden podium, decorated with flowers. The school had never hosted anything quite like this before, but the story of what had happened on Maple Street weeks ago had spread beyond the town, first through social media, then through local news. And at the center of it all was a 16-year-old boy who hadn't expected any of it. Ethan sat nervously in the front row, tugging at the sleeves of his too large dress shirt. He wasn't used to attention. He wasn't a student or the star of the debate team. He was just a kid who liked basketball and video games. Yet tonight, the spotlight was on him. Beside him sat Margaret Ellis, dressed in a soft blue dress, her silver hair neatly pinned, her cane resting against the chair. Her injuries had healed, but the memory of that fall was still fresh in her mind. She reached over and patted Ethan's hand, her eyes glistening. "You don't have to be nervous," she whispered. "Just be yourself. That's what made you special that day." When the principal stepped up to the podium, the audience hushed. "Tonight," he began, "we are here not to celebrate academic achievements or athletic victories, but something even greater, human kindness." He gestured toward Ethan. "A few weeks ago, an elderly woman collapsed on Maple Street. Dozens of people passed by. But one of our very own students made a choice. To stop, to help, and to remind us what compassion truly looks like." The crowd erupted in applause, and Ethan's face burned red. He glanced at Margaret, who was clapping with tears in her eyes. When Ethan was called to the stage, his legs felt heavy. He walked slowly, the sound of clapping echoing in his ears. Standing at the podium, he looked out at the sea of faces, his classmates, his coach, his friends, even strangers from the town. For a moment, his voice caught in his throat. I didn't really do anything special," he began, his voice shaky. "I just saw someone who needed help. And I couldn't walk away." He paused, searching for the right words. "The truth is, I almost did walk away. I was late for practice, my friends were waiting, and it would have been easy to pretend I didn't see her. But then I thought, what if that was my grandmother? What if it was someone I loved lying there while everyone just stared? That's when I knew I had to do something." The audience grew quiet, hanging on every word. Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm not telling this story to make myself look good. I just hope the next time any of us sees someone in need, we don't hesitate. We shouldn't wait for someone else to step in. Because sometimes, we are that someone." Silence filled the auditorium for a long second, then thunderous applause broke out, louder than before. Ethan stepped back, overwhelmed, as the crowd rose to its feet in a standing ovation. Margaret struggled to her feet too, leaning on her cane, tears streaming down her cheeks. She made her way onto the stage and embraced Ethan tightly. "You reminded me that kindness still lives in this world," she whispered. "And because of you, I don't feel alone anymore." Cameras flashed. People wiped their eyes. Even Ethan's basketball coach, known for being tough and unyielding, clapped proudly, a rare smile on his face. That night, as Ethan walked Margaret home under the streetlights, he realized something that would stay with him forever. Trophies, medals, and victories fade. But the impact of one selfless choice, the ripple of kindness, can outlast a lifetime. And on Maple Street, where it all began, the cracked pavement had been fixed by the town council, a quiet tribute to the day a boy's small act of humanity had shocked everyone and inspired them all.